Hey, yo, yo. Ow! I'd like to welcome everybody to this episode of Res Dog Walkers. Today, we have one of the people who's actually made this happen. I have my good friend and colleague and, I guess, business partner,
I'd say.
Sarah Weber from C3 Alliance, who I've been working with for, I don't want to age either of us, but we've been working together a long time now.
Yeah, it's not quite 10 years yet, but that won't be long.
No, we'll be passing that anniversary. So it's great to have Sarah with us today. Sarah and I first came together when she joined C3 Alliance, and we started talking around BC Natural Resources Forum, which I understand you had another successful one. Had some snow challenges this year. It's Prince George, so you always have snow challenges. But which BC NRF was that this year?
So yeah, it was the 21st annual. C3's been running it or managing, working on it since about 2013. So yeah, and anyways, we missed you. We were sorry that you got stuck in the snow, although good that you went and spoke at the Truck Loggers Convention. So they need that participation too. So that was good. Acceptable excuse for missing, but yeah, no, it was a great event. It was a great event. We had record number of attendance, and yeah, a lot of big issues on the table.
Definitely, there's lots happening in resource management right now, and I guess that's one of the reasons why we decided to start BC IROC. BC NRF has always had great First Nations participation, but I know you, Dan Jepson, and I had a conversation about how can we sort of make an Indigenous voice around this. And I think the synergies that have been developed between BC Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference and I can't say its predecessor because it's still there, but then what it was born from, BC NRF, really have a nice synergy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. I think the real success, or where people are find the the value out of the Natural Resources Forum up in Prince George is that it is multi-sector, and it's government, it's Indigenous leaders, and so there people quite a few years ago discovered there's a lot of commonalities and challenges in terms of making land use decisions and resource development. And so, where people start going, they're like, oh, and for a lot of people that work in a multitude of sectors at the same time, it's a great event to be at. And certainly C3's mandate has always been to bring that Indigenous voice to these sessions. And so I think as court cases have developed, it's obviously become more and more imperative, and resource developers are, also seeing that evolution, right, of rights and title and involvement. And so, yeah, having the BC IROC, which actually the first one was 2009, right? So held in Campbell River. I think Dan Jepson pulling out flats of pop and, at the hall downtown Campbell River. So I'd say you guys were maybe more visionaries of where it could go. But yeah, I think the BC IROC has some huge opportunities to really solidify itself and become a must place to be.
We're working at it, and I'm hoping this podcast will go a little bit more in helping in that direction. We get the normal big companies that want to sponsor and kind of get their message out there, which we help achieve. But I think of the evolution both in BC NRF and BC IROC, and there's only so many stories to tell when we first started doing this. And now there's this vast array of stories around resource development, resource protection, the evolving role of guardians in helping to safeguard both the protection and management of resources. Do you see BC IROC getting bigger? I guess that's more of a question you should be asking me, but do you see some more potential in some of the work that we've started that's growing?
Yeah, and I will throw that question back to you. But yeah, in my opinion, I think that it's what I like about the venue and the core values and people that have been involved so far is that the connections that are being made, and also the pragmatic and practical side to it. I mean, I grew up on a chicken farm, so I'm at the end of the day, it's what did you do, what did you produce, where did you it's very very practical. And so I like that there's, while there is some larger, bigger visions being discussed and policies, those types of things, there's still some very, pragmatic relationships being built and partnerships being built and business development. So I think it's a great venue for businesses that are looking to partner with nations, for nations that are looking for more opportunities. We can bring and help facilitate those relationships.
So chicken farmer to geologist to MBA.
Yeah.
This is the evolutionary curve that we're all on. We never kind of finish where we started, but where we started always seems to have impact on where we finish.
Wow, that is wise. You should make a poster.
I should. I'm deciding if this politics thing doesn't work out, I'm just going to create memes and GIFs and things like that. But it's been interesting working with you over the years and your team that's been growing. And, in the beginning, it was kind of you, me, and Dan Jepson and Coral Duncan, I believe, kind of making phone calls. And, I remember one time I could hear Dan on a phone threatening cabinet ministers, you got to get up here. You told us you were going to be here, to a point where now we have people requesting to come be on our agendas and be part of the program. What's one thing that you've noticed in the evolution? I mean, obviously the first days we just kind of did it, but now it's something that people are marking on their calendar, April 24th to 26th in Nanaimo, BC, by the way. But what's some of the evolution that you've seen in the years of, let's start with IROC first, because that's mine and it's more important than BC IROC from my eyes. But what do you think?
Well, I am going to throw this question right back to you. But from what I've seen is from a conference that had quite a regional focus, that that it is encompassing more conversations from up and down the coast of BC and through into the interior. And so that, and what I think you had shared to me is let's try to develop a program through an Indigenous lens, right? Like you've got decision makers within tribes and councils and I've seen and worked very closely with chiefs, and I think it's the hardest job that there is. And you've got somebody who's an expert on forestry at 9 a.m. They're talking aquaculture at 11. They're on to social services at 1 p.m. Business development. Like it's every level of government, wrapped into one office. And so I think it's very interesting to try to think of, as we talk about forestry. Well, someone said, "Oh, well, where's the forestry panel?" It's like, well, is that, if you're the chief, are you thinking I just want to talk about forestry, or are you thinking of, the entire territory and all the different resource activities that are happening on it? So it's, it's that big picture and trying to flip what people are seeing and try to put yourselves in the community seat of thinking about the connection to land and that balance of economic development, stewardship, conservation. And so I'll put that same question right back to you. Like, what have you seen in terms of evolution of the event?
No, I think similar. I think one of the things that has really delighted me as I've been able to look back is just the demographics that we've introduced into this discussion. And while that's never been a driving factor of anything that I've done, it's been very great to see, the average age of the people that we brought in to share stories starting to go down a little bit. As you said, in the first couple of years, it was about what was happening around Vancouver Island or within the circle around Namaqualis Council, because Namaqualis is sort of a presenting sponsor of BC Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference. But now we've brought in guests from all over British Columbia. This year we're talking with some people from back east about coming to share some of their stories that are related to issues in British Columbia right now. So actually seeing the appetite for more information from that First Nations context. For years, I'm an expert on the panel circuit. I go play the charity golf tournament the first day. You go to the mixer, and then you go to the day one of the program, and then you go to dinner, and then you wrap up for day two. And I really found a comfort spot in some of that. But I was really only there to share snippets of the insight that I had on certain issues. And so as we started talking about building our own conference for this, it was really important to try build an opportunity to come from that different tangent or that different point of view. Resource development isn't just about dollars and cents anymore. It's not about a commodity that's to be traded on the open market. There's so much more to it, from a social structure, from an economic well-being structure, obviously. And I think over the years, we've been able to start to illustrate how challenging the discussions around resource development is. And now we've started to, with last year, unfortunately, I hear last year's was the best. I mean, I'm not sure if that's because I wasn't there or maybe people were doing it for me in spirit. For those of our listeners that don't know, I had a kidney failure 3 days before BC IROC last year, but so many people were willing to step in and play a leadership role to help that discussion continue. And I've had nothing but positive feedback since then up till now about, hey, what stories are you going to tell? You should think about telling this story. Whereas before we'd have to kind of use our personal connections to get guests to come join us and be part of our panels. Now we got people coming in and saying, hey, I'd really like to share this story. Do you have a platform for me? And so I think that's one of the good things that have come about it. But I think one of the other interesting sides of it has been just the evolution of the discussion. We started off, I think Marco Romero was our first panelist around Orca sand and gravel. Interesting case study because of where they built it and the challenges with First Nations overlaps in a regional district that didn't get along with the First Nations communities that were there, and how they worked through it all to build a successful opportunity that's still paying dividends to the local community, to the First Nations. The employment levels have been great from it. But now we're starting to talk about resource management, just as opposed to just simply talking about resource development. I was so proud to have my niece, Alexandra Thomas, join us last year to talk about her role in our Evolving Guardianship program, and how it's not simply about protecting trees, it's about making sure that we harvest trees in a better way, but we take more things into consideration. So I guess that's sort of where I'm at, is what do we do now? And that's one of the reasons why I've got you here in Oh Boy Studios today, is how do we continue to take that to the next level? And I'm hoping this podcast both supports the evolution of the discussion, but even gets into some of the discussion that we can't do at that level, because you got 300 people in the audience, you got a panel that's on the stage, everybody gets their 7 to 11 minutes, and then there's 10 minutes of questions. We've changed that process. We've made that process more dynamic, but I think there's an appetite to even get more granular on that now, and what goes into some of that decision making that you went there. I know today we are able to have Wade Grant come join us and share some of his perspective around just where this is going to go around First Nation self-determination. And he brought up an interesting point around reconciliation is supposed to be about fixing a relationship that's wronged, if you go by the definition. But he articulated how this is about building a new relationship and starting things forward. And I think the symbiosis between BCNRF and BC IROC, while they're both great acronyms, I think they've gone a long way in helping, because people see us as separate, but also joined at the hip a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, first I'd like to correct for the record. Last year's BC IROC was not the best ever because you were not there. But what I did see, don't stop.
You know me the best.
But what was amazing was the community that sort of stepped forward and acts as an advisory committee, and I think that's just going to play a role to strengthen the event. So definitely 2024 is going to be the best ever event. And I think that people are seeing that value and making those connections in person. And it's going to be, the conference is about the people that come, right? It's about the people that come with issues and problems to solve. And hopefully it's an area to provide a platform of new ideas and of people that want solutions, that want to share and come together, because you're absolutely right. It's very hard work. Resource development is hard work. There's hard decisions to be made. There's so many complexities within communities. But my personal goal is always that people come in a constructive way to events like this and leave inspired to keep going on in their daily roles and do the things that need to be done.
I think we're doing that. I mean, obviously, we're probably hardest on ourselves about how can we make it better, how can we change it, but I don't think we necessarily need to change things. We just need to keep doing it and providing that platform. But I really look forward to April 24th to April 26th, where we can sit down and just continue the journey. Some of us have been on it. Like, I know every year I ask the question, who was here in 2009 for the first one? And then who was here when we first went to Nanaimo a couple years later? And just the evolution that's happened happened and some of the changes that have happened along the way, it's nice that people notice. I noticed during the feedback sessions that we really get a lot of productive comments around what people enjoyed. And so I think it's up to us as a committee to just continue to try to deliver that. I know I really enjoy going to BC IROC to start to work the room for BC IROC. I mean, this year you guys finally had me on a panel again after a couple of year hiatus, but that's just the way it works. It's not all Dallas all the time, at least until I get my own YouTube channel. But, you know, BCNRF is this place where you start this discussion and start this dialogue, and then you keep it going at BC IROC. And then at BC UBCM, you keep that discussion going. And then at the First Nations Leadership Gathering, these discussions are all just continuing now. And I'm really proud to say that, you know, these initiatives that C3 and Nunwakos have put together have really played an instrumental role in helping bring people together. So I hope I see you before April 24th to April 26th in Nanaimo, BC. But I want to thank you for being one of the first guests on Res Dog Walkers. And
amazing.
Look forward to continuing this journey with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dallas. Really appreciate it.
Yo ho hey yo, yo ho hey yo, yo ho hey yo, hey 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 yo.